hit record. So welcome everyone. Let's see here. Hold on. Let me see what I have in my room. Judy, can I ask you to take notes? Do you have the Miro? Oh no, actually, Judd, I'm asking you, flow representatives. Can you take notes for me? Okay. Sorry. Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Thank you. It's just a clarifying question. So I'm looking at the slides that were presented in the beginning, 1920, with the options and the percentages and how they change across the different scenarios. And I'm just wondering if I'm reading it right. It says the English in the English language learners slide and the native students of color. It seems like all the percentages go down across all of the scenarios. And is that assumption that those population numbers go down? Am I reading that right?
No, it does look like that at first. I think it's a little counterintuitive, but actually what's happening is that just that proportion is changing because of, taking a new feeder school, for instance, that, I don't know, what's an example, Atkinson feeding over to Harrison Park, right? That's a population of students that has a lower rate of low income or English language learner. And so therefore, adding that population to the existing Harrison Park population decreases that proportion. So it isn't a forecast that we're going to be seeing fewer students than we are right now in 2021 of any particular socio-economic category or indicator, but that the way that we're reshuffling the enrollment actually brings that down for most schools.
Chad?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Judy. Or,
Yeah.
sorry,
I just
I know
wanted to
Judd's gonna
clarify
Judy's gonna clarify
that Harrison Park existing, like there's no chance that that includes any K-5 kids, right? We're 100% that that's 6-8 only, because it might be the whole K-8. If it wasn't disaggregated just for those 3 grades, it could sort of skew it. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I think for existing, yeah, that may include the K-5 as well, only for that school.
yeah, which could sort of throw the whole proportion off a little bit when you go from 33% to 11.
Right.
Something big has happened there, and the big might be that your grades that have higher proportions of English language learners, right, because they're your youngest kids, aren't a part of the counts in the other ones.
Okay, so I see your hand up, Chris. Yeah, I mean, at this point, what we're trying to get to is just continuing the conversation that we were having in the large room and trying to see where we can get to some points of consensus. So with that, Chris, I'm going to go to you.
Thanks. So I, like Mike Roll, because we're lane people, are really worried about the loss of the federal funding and how that will impact our school. And it's a wonderful thing that we'll get more kids. But I've had the experience of teaching in a school the year it lost its Title I status, and the subsequent years. Those are super hard years because all the kids that were needing those services are still there. Plus you have more kids, but you have fewer resources. And it's just a tough place to be as educators. So I just want to put that out there. And I guess my question to Jed is, he mentioned that people of color and low income people are moving east, that's what he's seeing. But I wonder, is it south also? Because Lane isn't so far east as it is south. So I see Judy nodding her head, but are we projecting that is going to continue, that the socioeconomics of Brentwood Darlington, where I live, are going to continue to be whiter and more wealthy compared to how they are now, which is not either of those things so much. So is this our future? Do we know? Can we guess?
Yeah, I wish I knew. So yeah, there's 2 different things that are going on here, which is, what we see every day in the neighborhood, right? Gentrification, changing of the neighborhood, right? That is not something that we're projecting for when we're looking at these numbers here. And so what you're instead seeing, although it looks like it's showing, like gentrification is showing up in some of these numbers, it's actually just that we've redrawn the boundaries of a school to include a different population of students.
Mhm.
And that changes the
The
proportion.
demographic.
Yes, that changes. That's by nature what we're seeing here. Or in some cases, we're taking a program like Chinese dual language immersion and putting it at a completely new school, and assuming that that brings along with it the same socioeconomics that it has in its current location, which
Oh,
is
right.
a bit of a leap in itself. But we expect some of that would occur, at least in the near term.
Yeah, so in light of that, I guess my case for Elaine would be that our first choice would be to not go backwards, to not be able to serve our most vulnerable people less well. And I'm not sure exactly which one of these scenarios would meet that criteria, although I think the one least likely to meet it is D2.
Correct. Okay, thanks, Chris. D.
I guess wanted to give some support to what Chris said. We were a school that also lost our Title I funding a couple years ago, and it's been a really rough couple years for us, especially going into the pandemic. And there's just a lot of makeup resources that communities have to do. And Chris is absolutely right. Your population doesn't change; you just lose the funding, and the population changes that you see, in our school, for instance. A lot of our demographic shift was happening at the kindergarten level, and that those families were actually off-site. So there was actually no interaction between those incoming families and the rest of the school, but we lost our Title I funding. So it was messy a couple of years. So I totally understand why that's a concern for those communities. And then I guess, I don't know, I want to figure out a way to sort of maybe say this in front of the larger group, but I just want to be really clear about I want us to be really clear as we're talking about we sort of summarize the statistics and the data sometimes, and then we have a talking point, and that talking point sort of overrides things sometimes. And I think that the impression that there's an issue with co-located DLI, I just want it to be clear that it's not an issue with the programs. I think everybody who's in a school that has a co-located program, and then also these are neighborhood families that are in the DLI program, so there isn't this clear split between neighborhood and non-neighborhood. This community is coming from the same geographical location, they're just in different learning programs. But I think the issue that we have at Bridger and maybe other lower SES schools is that when we have one strand of neighborhood, and our enrollment just drastically changes between year to year. And so when we have a class that has 13 kids, they're really under-resourced. And then we have a year where the neighborhood class has 40 kids, and there's way too many kids, and there isn't a second class for them to balance the enrollment. And so a lot of the negative impacts I think that we are talking about are coming from the unbalanced co-location, not from there being something wrong with the program as a whole, if that makes sense. And so I just want that to be clear moving forward, that as we talk about co-locating a program, that there isn't a inherently negative effect to having a co-located program. I think there's lots of socioeconomic issues, which is that families that tend to be more involved in the school process and the school choice process kind of self-select into these programs because the impression is that it's a higher quality program and you're trying to find something better for your kids. But I don't think there's any inherent issue with the programs in general.
Thanks, Steve. Harmony.
Following up on, I think what Dee was saying too. I think that we experienced that in the neighborhood program too, and we have two strands at Atkinson, right? My concern about most of these D proposals is that it leaves a number of elementary schools pretty critically under enrolled is what it looks like 3 or 4 of them in the low 230, 240. And I was trying to do the math around what that would mean for classes. And I think there's a lot of instability that is likely to occur, right? That Dee has seen in their neighborhood and their single strand of neighborhood that we've seen in our 2 strands of neighborhood that actually fluctuate quite a bit between grade level. Our boundary is relatively small. What ends up happening is our Spanish is like a stabilizing force because it's lotteried in, so it's the same size every year. There's a single class of it, and our neighborhood is what goes up and down and up and down. And I think we'll see the same thing in very small elementary schools. You'll have maybe one year you'll have 60 kindergartners and another year you'll have 40. And so what happens is you have 3 classes that go down to 2, that go up to 3, and then your staffing stability goes out the window, right? Your ability to maintain your staff and grow a culture and all of that is a real struggle. I think part of what has made Atkinson successful to some degree is that we have the stabilizing force of a single strand of lotteried Spanish.
Thanks, Harmon. Sandra, I see your hands up, but I want to see, Judy, do you have a clarification that would be germane at this point, or do you want to wait to go after Sandra?
It was clarification,
Okay, go
Harmony,
ahead.
just to say that there are a lot of rough edges that need to be attended to. We've got to get past these program placements so that we can focus on the neighborhood school impacts.
Mhm.
And I know it's hard and people are continuing to bring good ideas forward, but there's just not been an opportunity to address exactly what you're saying. And we're really yearning to do that with you.
Well, we
But
gotta land
until
this
we
ship
got the
first.
programs nailed down, we can't really make the trade-offs and the lines the way we need to.
Okay. Sandra.
Just tacking on to what Harmony was talking about, we had an issue in the neighborhood program at Arleta. It just finished actually, and it may come up again, but where we had to have an extra classroom for one grade level every single year they were at the school. You know, we had 1 year where we ended up with an entire extra class of kindergartners. And then as we just went up through, I think they're 7th graders now, they had to go through and sort that out. So it's not, you know, it's a problem that can occur anywhere. And luckily it didn't really cause a teacher retention issue because we had a lot of teaching teams. And so it kind of just, I don't know, it was weird. It was like they passed the kids up as they went along. I had one of my kiddos was in the lower half of that. So we saw each year, we were kind of involved as that went along. And there was only 1 year we had a hiccup, and that can happen, I think, in any circumstance, but it's definitely not untreaded waters. So I don't feel horribly nervous about that. I had 2 quick questions, and this may not be the place or time for them, but I just want to put them out there, and you are more than welcome to tell me the place and time that they should be addressed, and I'm all down for that. I just want to get them out real fast. First one is, I guess, probably for Judy, and maybe anyone else that might know. I'm just wondering, when we get to a split feeder discussion. So we're seeing split feeder at the middle school level for a lot of these proposals where maybe the DLI students go to, you know, the school where the DLI program is going to be consolidated. How does that affect attrition? So just curious if there has been historically, if we have data on that, we've seen that there are, you know, a lot of students that jump out of the DLI program to stay with the neighborhood kids or try to transfer, or, you know, that kind of thing. And then the second question is about funding when you have a co-located program. Judy, I guess the first question, is that one for you? And is it for now, or is it something I should email you about?
I can give you a quick that we've got a lot of split feeder patterns from middle to high school. A DLI is not always a feature in them. I think the closest we have is maybe Japanese immersion, and we do have some Japanese immersion reps who are part of this. You might want to check in with Maya, for example, but generally, no, we don't see a lot of attrition when it's a split versus when all the kids go together.
Okay. And then the second question is about the funding with a co-location, because we had a meeting where one individual was very insistent that our LEDA would be adversely affected from an FTE and funding point by having a co-location with the Bridge DLI program, which is not something that I've heard or heard anyone else bring up. So I wanted to do my due diligence on that. I don't know if maybe Jennifer might know, or
Yeah, I would defer to Jennifer, who leads a co-located school and knows what it takes to get it staffed, but I don't know of any
Inherent.
anything specific about that. I'm not anyway, Jennifer.
I think the question to you, Jennifer, is there anything inherent in the co-located model that you think would impact funding?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I would really like for us to consider the idea that was presented in the whole group around a both and talk about what it would look like, if Mandarin immersion stays as a co-located model and Spanish immersion looks at whole school. And because I think that even for neighborhoods, if we're talking about robust neighborhood schools, 270 is still really low. We're talking about 45 kids per grade level. I was just looking at how many classes are LEDA for, and I can see that issue with, there's a certain number of K1s, and there's a different number of thirds, and there's 4, 5 blends. And, honestly, I'm an idealist. Best case scenario, we are always looking at schools that have at least 2 or 3 strands of a program at each grade level. To account for, sometimes enrollment is going to change and staffing will need to be adjusted. But I would definitely be concerned about moving forward with co-location at a new school, thinking about, there's so many things to think about culturally and language-wise, and staffing and reading specialists and special education. I do feel like I am a broken record and I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but my experience is that it can work. It can work and we can make it work. But if we're talking about really creating something that is sustainable, and there's all these changes that are going to happen anyways, I would love for us to move towards thinking about really what could be best for kids, which is a school where we can focus on the needs of the students in particular at that school, whether it is a language, whether it's a neighborhood, just creating a really robust neighborhood program that is all wrapped around, a central mission and vision, and staffing and academic priorities. And when we split languages, then we have 2 priorities, regardless. And then we have 2 different staffing needs. And we already have a shortage of bilingual staff and specialists. So I think that I would be interested in this group considering what school-wide neighborhood robust programs and locations could look like, and school-wide immersion, Spanish immersion, robust programming could look like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was there, I apologize, I have a headache, but was there an answer to my question in there that I missed?
Yeah, can you be a little more specific? Your question was around staffing.
Around funding and staffing issues. Like literally we were told, well, you could lose your art teacher, you could lose, this teacher, you can lose, these specials, you may lose this, that, or the other thing. And that is not something that I've heard in this conversation thus far.
And to be clear, Sandra, what you're saying is the statement that was made is you could lose it specifically by going to a co-located model, not regardless of kind of what the numbers were.
Correct.
Does currently Arleta receive federal funding for Title I?
No, we went through that transition a few years back.
No, I mean, the staffing is dependent on the number of kids that are in a school.
Just the straight enrollment. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, this was a person in a position of authority, so that's why I'm exploring it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Before, and I know Oscar and Harmony, you guys have your hands up, but I kind of want to get to, yeah, we want to get to the middle school options, but I want to do a quick, it just in the chat. Will you enter in, if you are interested in seeing a model that is this both and, right? Which is let me see if I'm getting this right. Mandarin, co-locations kind of continuing, and a whole school Spanish at the elementary school, assuming consolidation of those programs at middle. If that is something you would like to see modeled, please say yes in the chat. Just give you 1 minute to do that, so that way we can at least. And if it's not something you're interested in, then please put no in there. Okay, I think we have consensus around something. That's good. And then we need to be able to get to, so I'm going to go, Jennifer, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before you finish up? Okay, I'm going to lower your hand then. All right, Oscar, and then Harmony, and then we're going to move to talking about the middle school models. Oops, sorry, Oscar, I think I put your hand down. Go ahead, it's on you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just like to see, I don't know, does PPS have a model or have some example of like literally moving a program like a DLI into a neighborhood program, like just out of nowhere, just here you go? Just because the culture, the community that needs to get built, like what kind of backing will this future school have to kind of integrate and to really, you know, keep the same culture that is happening right now, let's say at Bridger or Atkinson, you know, like there's a relationship, there's a, you know, they're working together for the betterment of the students. So is there an example out there? I don't know. And if so, or if not, what is PPS going to do to create that, right?
I mean, I can certainly speak to that. Yeah, I opened up Roseway Heights Middle School, and we had to bring 4 communities together. And included in those communities was the Spanish dual language immersion program from Harvey Scott Elementary School. And so basically I was a planning principal for the previous year. And during that time, we held individual meetings with each community to kind of get a taste of the character of each individual feeder school community and what types of things they wanted to see in the school. And then we started holding bigger meetings, bringing the school communities together. So in this particular situation for Roseway Heights, we're not only going to have the Spanish dual language immersion there, we were also going to have Vietnamese dual language immersion there. It just wasn't going to start until 2 years later. So there was a lot of community groundwork there that happened, and really hearing the voices of students and parents and teachers who would be involved, because the teachers came with the students also. They had the option to come with the students. And so we wanted to keep as much of the program and the culture intact as possible. So it was a lot of work and a unique challenge. But the community and the students really rose to the occasion, I felt.
Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, Harmony, last comment on this topic before we move to middle school. Yeah.
I think the other thing that I heard and would like to consider too is that not just both and in terms of Chinese and Spanish, but the idea Beth proposed about Atkinson maintaining a co-located single strand of immersion and then the whole school DLI at Lent. I think one that allows the 2 Bridger strands to move together and stay, and it also is responsive to certainly our native speaking Spanish community, who has talked significantly about not wanting whole school DLI and the concerns that they have. So not just, you know, this both and in terms of Spanish and Chinese, but that there's not a one size fits all solution.
Yeah, my concern is that we're then getting back to kind of, well, we'd have to see where the numbers land on that, because my concern is then we're getting back to just kind of leaving programs where they are, and that
Sure.
worries me a
I
little
mean,
bit, right? I mean,
that's
that's,
what,
and
yeah,
that's
but
not,
that's what Chinese is doing, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, I think there's an argument to be made that that's responsive, and that Atkinson's longstanding program is effective in ways
So-
that, you know, so I mean, I just would like it explored.
So, I, just gonna say this one more time. We agree that what Beth proposed and there's interest in seeing will be modeled. You will
Right.
see it hopefully by the next meeting. Flo will have to confirm that. So as discussed before, and if we agree to model it for you, could we then maybe
Let's move
hear
on.
a little bit about where you stand on, like,
middle school.
there may be strong support in this group for Kellogg for Spanish, but what are we doing for Harrison Park, and what about Chinese immersion? I haven't heard anything about that, and I know we're gonna have to go back to the big group in just a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry to be pushy.
No, I think you're exactly right. So let's focus on that for a minute. Like, let's talk about these middle school options and where we want to land. Sandra.
So looking at these proposals, I understand, you know, Jennifer, you did a great job explaining to the Spanish DLI program subcommittee last week the amount of work that went into setting up the Spanish DLI program at Kellogg. But I'm concerned that we're kicking the can down the road, because just the sheer size of Kellogg and its capacity in the schools, we've got all this pressure feeding sort of from that area where Kellogg is when you're looking at the surrounding middle schools, and Harrison Park has so much more capacity. I'm wondering, like, where down the line, if we have Kellogg cited with like 91, 99%, that doesn't really leave us anything for the future. So I'm wondering, you know, if we continue with the idea of staying with Kellogg with the DLI, the Spanish DLI cited there, what are our thoughts down the future, you know, given the capacity issues that we're dealing with right off the bat?
Jed, is there an easy answer to that one?
Sorry, taking notes. Is there an easy answer?
I'm
to
assuming the
that
answer
one?
is no.
Just say the last part of that again, Sandra. I was taking a note.
I'm just wondering, it seems like Kellogg is the site where we would have, if we had Harrison Park as the Spanish DLI, or, you know, when we were looking at the proposals that had Harrison Park, you know, that there were less neighborhood schools feeding into Harrison Park, which gave more room for growth. And Kellogg felt to me like the place where we have room, for lack of a better term. So I'm just wondering, if we go forward with keeping the Spanish DLI at Kellogg and we're at like 91, 99% in some of these proposals, what options does that give us for the future? Like, I feel like we may be kicking the can down the road here.
Yeah, you know, it limits the options for neighborhood programs if the Spanish DLI program is consolidated at Kellogg, right? Because we've got to work around that big piece. And there are, as folks, you know, talked about, like a lot of schools centered right around Kellogg. And so it makes it, you know, like, I think we see Atkinson having to go elsewhere in pretty much any of those situations. So that is one of the realities. We just can't get all the nearby schools in Kellogg with Spanish DLI there.
Option D2 has it at 80%, so I think that's a fix.
Yeah, so I guess I want to, is it possible for us to talk about program placements and see if we can get some consensus. I'm going to start with Spanish, right? At the middle school level, let's just say middle school level. So in the chat, I don't know if you want to, do we want to do it by letter? I think we want to do it by letter.
You have 16 seconds.
Yeah, we haven't, gosh darn it. I'm going to see if we can't come back to 10 for 10 minutes here instead of going to break, which is where we're supposed to go. So
Are folks willing to stay through the
are you
conversation?
guys willing to break to come back? Come back. Okay. Okay. Oscar, did you finish your point?
Yeah, just looking at I think D1 is the scenario that had Kellogg at like 99% or something crazy. And D2 is the one that kind of gave it a little bit more breathing room. And rightly so, just because this is a JED question. Lent had 2 immersion, but like they're also trying to grow a 3rd one, right? In that scenario where they're trying to really have it be a bigger program, or they're going to keep it at 2.
Yeah, so that one's a split feeder situation, right? So just going back to the slide deck here real quick. So D2, yeah, it is a little bit more reasonable for Kellogg, but you have Lent's neighborhood program then feeding up to Harrison Park, and you have Atkinson's neighborhood feeding over to Harrison Park. So that's, yeah, kind of those trade-offs that you've got with being able to cite all of Spanish DLI at Kellogg.
And do your trends show that the Spanish immersion program is going to be growing, or is it flattening out or declining in the future?
It's maintained as a
Okay.
as a 2-strand, so in that mid 200 enrollment range.
Okay, y'all. I want to see if we can get to any consensus. So what we're going to do is use our consensus model, FIS to 5 in the chat. So 0 to 5. And we're just going to go through for really quickly all of the D models that we have. Okay. So I am going to share my screen and I'm going to put this on. So this is D, help me here. This is D1. Okay. So D1, who can support this? Like, what level of support do you give this? 5 being highest support, 0 being lowest support. So if you would put in the chat for D1 right now, what your level of support is for this option from 0 to 5, 5 being the most, the highest support.
I just need to ask a logistical question. First of all, the slides in our folder, do they have this enrollment on them? The slides that I'm pulling up from our folder don't have the, can this slide deck be shared with us? Also, why isn't there percentages for Harrison Park and Lane?
I think the only percentages that are shown on these are percentages that exceed the target.
Okay.
Or
Correct.
right. So, and anything in red that is a percentage is either not achieving a middle school target number, being like lower than the target enrollment, or exceeding the utilization.
And where is this found in the folder? What is this called?
This is the presentation for tonight. And I do believe the updated proposals are also in the folder.
Where is the presentation for tonight? Is it in the folder of
It's in
meeting
the folder.
materials?
Yep, it is.
Okay.
And it's also
Thank you.
shown on your screen right now.
It's very small.
Oh, on your screen potentially.
For
Yeah,
me.
for me, it's giant.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm seeing for D1 is a lot of 3s, a 2, and a couple of 4s. So this is, kind of lukewarm is what I'm saying.
Just for clarification, the percentages are not on the slide deck that was shared with us in the SEGC.
Okay, I believe that updated slides, the updated content is in the folder as of now. That's what Megan put in the chat. I can't speak to that 100%, but that is what I believe was shared earlier. Okay, so now I'm going to move to D2. I'm going to put that in our chat to kind of keep track of that. And then I'm going to move to proposal D2. So this one has middle school Chinese at DLI at Lane, Spanish DLI at Kellogg, with co-located with a Russian DLI at Harrison Park. 1 through 5, 0 through 5, 5 being the greatest level of support, 0 or 1 being the least level of support. Okay. Okay, so D2 is getting mostly some 3s, some 4s and 5s, with the recognition, Chris, that D2 is the least favorable for Lane because of the potential impact to your SES, to Title I. Okay. We'll go D3. So D3 is middle school Chinese moves to Kellogg, and Spanish goes to Harrison Park. Again, 0 or 1 to 5. Or 0 to 5 if you want to go that low. You're fine, D. I think we've been doing fist to 5, which is technically 0. Trying to see if everyone voted. Can say yes, I believe so. Okay, so the last one, D4. Chinese DLI at Hofsford, Spanish DLI at Harrison Park. Stop sharing my screen here and get back to faces. Okay, Judy's going to, oops. Judy, can I ask you to just, you're compiling, I'm assuming you were taking numbers down for us. In my just really quick analysis, it looked like the one with the most preference was D2, with the consideration around Lane, right? And the SES. So Chris, if there is a way to adjust it, whether it's through boundaries or through something else that addresses the Title I loss, would that change your vote?
Yes. Yes, tentatively. I have, we have, well, we have some concerns about the bigger strand, the larger proportion of the increase in our student body being made up of the dual language students.
Okay, fair enough.
So that it's not only the SES thing, it's that a bigger proportion of who is joining us is not a neighborhood school.
Okay.
So we would prefer not to increase our the co-located numbers for the purpose of increasing our numbers in general. We feel like that would create a number of ways that our school would feel really separate.
Okay, I believe they're going to push us back here. So I'm going to give you, when they push us back, we're going to get whatever 30 seconds. So Elizabeth, I'm going to give you, I think your hand was up first, maybe 15 seconds. And D, I want to get to you as well. Okay, go Elizabeth.
Okay, so I was really mixed on whether to share this, but I'm starting to feel really strongly that we have this really beautiful school that is in some ways purpose-built to host, and it is hosting the Spanish language immersion, and it seems centrally located. And I feel like I want to prioritize one of the nicer schools in the district for BIPOC students. And I'm making an assumption about who makes that up with the Spanish program. But I just want to kind of own that. I would like to prioritize students that have not gotten the best schools historically.
Thank you. All right, Dee, round us out.
And Judy's going to hate me for saying this, but the one thing I would say about these programs that put the Spanish at Harrison Park is that I just don't want to forget that the DLI programs are neighborhood based. They're drawing from neighborhood students. And so if we are going to have any proposal that looks at Spanish at Harrison Park, I think needs to look at a location for the program within a natural boundary for Harrison Park, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that, the point sort of our desire for Arleta is it seems centrally located. The community there seems to be a good match for us, SES, both from an SES standpoint and just from their BIPOC population is really similar to ours outside of the DLI also. But outside of that, I think I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the shuffle, that we don't want to just start moving the DLI programs outside of their natural feeder paths also.
Chris, we've got about a minute. Your hand's still up? Do you want, okay. Anyone else want to
Chris.
take up this last minute?
Chris, your
Chris.
highest vote was for Hosford. For Chinese immersion at Hosford, more neighborhood. So that would mean we'd have to fill both Harrison Park and Lane with mostly neighborhood. And then keep the immersion programs basically where they are, make them bigger. I'm just saying, is that something that people could live with or want to look at? Or are
I thought the assumption was that, like, in order to fill Harrison Park,
You couldn't do that, yeah.
you need a program there.
okay? Thank you.
I mean, I could be wrong, but that was my impression of the numbers. Like,
Yeah, I was trying to get at, are people feeling strongly about Harrison Park in D2, not just other schools?